Welcome to 21st Sports recap and reaction to the Cleveland Browns versus the New York Jets Week 1 matchup. And this was an interesting game. Chris Ivory had one heck of a game. We're going to go over the stats and we're going to go over the scoring summary. Then we're going to give our analysis. But starting off in this game, before they got to the scoring, we almost had a touchdown when McCown take off out of the pocket, and he looked like he was doing his best impersonation of John Elway, except he forgot to tuck the football as he got hit going for the end zone and was spun around like a helicopter, but he let go of the ball. As you see him, as he took off, he was just holding the ball with one hand loose off to the side, almost looking like as if he was a corner who had just intercepted the ball. A lot of times you see the corners just kind of loosely holding the ball out there, not protecting it because they're not offensive players. They're not used to protecting the ball. But you would expect an offensive player to know to cradle that thing in, except he had it too loose, and by the time he actually did bring it into his body, he was already going to dive up in the air, spinning around, and the ball got loose. And so the Jets would recover, and McCown would leave the game. And so Johnny Manziel was brought in. And that was the thing with Cleveland. You didn't know who was going to be the quarterback, really. How long was McCown going to last? And it wasn't very long before we saw Johnny Football already right here in Week 1. And he actually scored the first touchdown of this game. It was in the second quarter, a 54-yard pass to Travis Benjamin. And that put the Browns up 7-0 after the extra point. So then the Jets would respond with a 10-yard touchdown run by Chris Ivory with about 10 minutes left before halftime, and it was now tied up at 7 after the extra point. Then with less than 3 minutes left before the break, Travis Coons would hit a 26-yard field goal to make it 10-7, putting the Browns in the lead by 3. But with less than 30 seconds left before the intermission, Ryan Fitzpatrick hits Eric Decker for a 15-yard touchdown pass, and after the extra point, it would be 14-10 as the Jets would go up by 4 headed into the locker rooms at halftime. And in the second half, it was all Jets as the Jets shut down the Browns in the second half, and they would put up 17 points, starting with a touchdown pass from Fitzpatrick to Brandon Marshall. There was a crazy play earlier, too, where it was an interception. Brandon Marshall would strip the ball and take the ball back. But this one right here, Brandon Marshall scores the touchdown, and it would end up being 21-10 after the extra point. So now the Jets were up by 11, and then with about 30 seconds left in the third quarter, Nick Folk would add another 3 with a 34-yard field goal to make it a 14-point lead as they went up 24-10. Then in the fourth quarter, Chris Ivory would add a touchdown for good measure, his second rushing touchdown of the day, a 3-yard run, and that made it 31-10. Although there was still 10.5 minutes left to play, that would be the final score as the Jets defense was looking very impressive on this day. And Fitzpatrick, although he didn't put up big numbers and he did turn the ball over, he actually, he didn't make too many mistakes, and they won the game. He had just 179 passing yards, 15 of 24, but he did have 2 touchdowns and just 1 interception. So as long as he can have more touchdowns than interceptions, then the Jets can win games like they did today. And their defense, like I said, they were looking pretty stellar, other than a couple plays there. I mean, that 54-yard touchdown by Manziel, who ended up with 182 yards through the air off of 13 for 24, completions for attempts. And he had 1 touchdown and 1 interception. He also had 35 yards on the ground as he scrambled 5 times. And McCown was 5 for 8 before leaving the game early on there, just 49 passing yards. And Chris Ivory, he had a huge fantasy performance and a huge performance overall in this game with 91 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns off of 20 carries. And he actually had 100 total yards right on the dot as he had 1 reception for 9 yards. So Chris Ivory, a big day. And Powell actually was looking good too with 12 attempts for 62 yards, although he didn't hit pay dirt. But Brandon Marshall got in the end zone. Just 62 yards, but he had 6 receptions, and as I said, he had a touchdown. Owusu had 4 receptions for 55 yards, and Decker 2 receptions for 37 yards, one of which was a touchdown. And over on the Cleveland side, Mansell was their leading rusher, as I said, with that 35 yards. And their second leading rusher was McCown, who was 3 for 23. So that's not a good sign for Cleveland right there. Of course, it is a good sign for Jets fans, as their run defense was pretty dominant, holding the rookie Johnson to just 22 yards off of 7 carries, and they held Isaiah Crowell to just 20 yards off of 12 carries. Travis Benjamin was looking pretty good, although he just had 3 receptions. He had 89 yards, of course, one of which was that 54-yard touchdown. And then Barnridge, 3 receptions for 38 yards. We look over at the defense. And on defense, the top tackler was Pryor with 8 tackles for the Jets. Harris had a sack to go along with his 6 tackles. Wilkerson had a sack as well. He had 3 tackles in the game. Williams had an interception. Riley had a sack as well for the Jets. And the Browns defense, just they were not looking very good at all, that's for sure. And they actually, the Jets only had 18 first downs to the Browns 15 first downs, but they were able to capitalize. And on third downs, they converted 7 of 13, whereas the Browns converted 8 of 16. In total net yards, it was pretty close too, as the Jets had 333 to just 321 from the Browns. But they outrushed them 154 yards to 104 yards, although the Browns actually had more passing yards, 217 to 179. So Fitzpatrick, they said, not like a big performance, but he did do a halfway decent job of protecting the ball. He did have a turnover. That's going to happen, but when you can have more touchdowns than interceptions, at least that's, something. And they won the game. And it really was all about Chris Ivory, and it was all about the defense of the Jets. The big performance by their defense, and also big performance by Chris Ivory. Although the Browns actually had the more possession time with 31 minutes and 40 seconds versus 28 minutes and 20 seconds for the Jets. Like I said, the run defense was looking very impressive, and Chris Ivory had a huge performance in those 2 touchdowns, and they ended up winning this one. The final score 31-10 as the Jets start out the season on the right foot, and the Browns, it looks like it's going to be a long season. Although Mansell actually, he showed some signs. I think, if you saw my season preview, I said they should just leave Johnny in there and let him go through his growing pains. They said at moments he looks spectacular. In other moments, not so much. But he's young, he's growing. It's a tough league. So you got to let him get out there and take his licks, and then he'll be better off for it. But that's what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. Definitely interested to read your thoughts and opinions. Thank you very much for listening. It's greatly appreciated. I hope you're having a good day and had a great weekend, and enjoy all the sports.